guys, what is going on? Welcome to this week's preview for the BMW Championship. Coming off a really fun event at the Northern Trust, won by Tony Finau. I had an outright on a guy in the second to final pairing with Tony Finau, Justin Thomas, but he did not pull through. He needed a low number. Tony Finau went out there and got it. Rahm kind of gagged it up on the last couple of holes. Didn't birdie the short par 4, made a bogey, I think, on the last. So he ended up giving it away. Cam Smith gave him a run, too, coming off of his 60 the other day. Obviously, the weather delay obviously impacted some things. No fans out there or anything like that. The course, certainly a little soft, but Tony Finau made the most of the opportunity. He's a guy who's backed Tony Finau a ton over the years. Good to see him in the winner's circle. Sad that I did not have a ticket on him. I think his pre-tournament juicy number was 60-1. I did not bite on it. In hindsight, the model wasn't going to tell you to go there, but for a guy like that, it's probably a good play. But anyway, I digress. We ended up down 6 units last week just because we stretched it out a little bit. This week with the BMW, there's only 70 guys in the field. Next week's the Tour Championship, only 30 in the field, and the staggered start. So there's kind of limited opportunities here over the next couple weeks. So my plan is to scale back, basically gear up for the swing season, make sure that we're not stretching it too far in these, really strong field events where a lot of guys, obviously can win, and the numbers that we're getting are not maybe the greatest. So definitely a good time to kind of scale back a little bit. For me, last week was my go get it, got the juicy numbers on all of these studs, and ultimately Tony Finau came up on top. So on to the BMW Championship. So a little bit of disinformation over the weekend about the course. So it's played at Cave Valley, just outside of Baltimore. They actually have lengthened this thing considerably. So if you're looking at any of the previews that are out there on the website, it said it was a par 71, 7,200 yards. It is in fact a par 72 and closer to 7,500 yards. So guys at distance are going to have a pretty big advantage here. Guys that are dialed in with long irons. It looks like, just going through some of the course hole by hole flyovers, if you have distance, there's actually wider fairways beyond the hazard. So I think this is going to be a place where guys that can really bomb it and are dialed in from an iron perspective, wedge perspective, and good bent grass putters, I think they're going to play really well this week. So everyone, it's no secret, everyone's on Bryson this week for good reason. So I've brought in a couple things in the model just to take a look at that. But I think there are a couple other guys that I'm looking really hard at for the week too. So want to see, if anyone's presenting from the model, looks to be a good value. Some of the numbers on some of these guys, basically outside of Rahm, they do actually look pretty reasonable. So again, it's not a week where I'm going to go crazy. I'll probably have maybe 2.5 units in play, something like that. But I want to make sure we're looking and leaning into the model this week. So if we jump into that, the model that I've teed up, putting a lot of weight on strokes gained off the tee and driving distance as a component of that, strokes gained approach, bent grass putting, key proximity distances. I actually brought in basically everything because I'm not 100% sure. Probably going to end up putting more weight on like this 150 to 175, 175 to 200 range, 200 plus. But then I think that a key differentiator, something that can separate guys from winning and losing, is how they're going to handle the long par 3s that are on the scorecard. So for me, I'm putting about 10% weight on that. But if you can't go out there and at least, again, they're the more difficult holes on the course. If you can't go out there and at least, make a par, you're going to be, it's going to be hard to contend because you're going to have to make up for that elsewhere. So this is my model for the week. No surprise, the two guys that always come out on top, Paul Casey, Colin Morikawa. I'm looking a little further back than that. So no surprise, Bryson rates out really well. Was not lucky enough to jump on the 35-1 that I think Draftkings had this morning. I think he's down to like 25, 22 to most places. So everyone's on the Bryson train this week. From a DFS perspective, I think he's like 9,200. So he's going to be chalk city. So you either just fade him completely or lock him into every single lineup. That's kind of the strategy from a DraftKings perspective. And from a betting perspective, I'm probably just going to end up betting him at 22, 25, whatever I can get my hands on at this point. But the one thing I wanted to point out with him is that he's actually really good on the long par threes, really good with the 200 plus proximity. Obviously, driving distance, that's his thing, but he's 18th in the field in bent grass putting. All the stars lining up for Bryson to play well this week. But two other guys that I'm looking really closely at from an outright perspective. So Victor Hovland's 35-1. He is dialed in from your key proximity distances. He also is pretty good on the long par threes. Can't putt. Had a little bit of an issue last week at the Northern Trust. He actually broke his putter in frustration because he came in to the final round just a couple shots off the lead, ended up making an 8 out there. I'm willing to let that go. I think he could come out firing this week, and he sets up really well for the course, and you can get a really nice number on him. So 35-1 for Victor Hovland might be where I go. The other guy that I'm looking really closely at is DJ. So he missed the cut last week. He lost strokes on approach, but before that was really dialed in. Obviously, because he missed the cut last week, he wasn't hanging out from a weather perspective. He got out there a little bit early. He's right now 22-1. He's basically, one of the best in the field on these long par threes. Also really good from the key proximity distances. So DJ is a guy I think that could fly a little bit under the radar this week. Daniel Berger continues to just gain with the irons. So he's another guy I'd be looking at this week as well, who's a little further back. Sam Burns, Joaquin Niemann, Scotty Scheffler, guys that I'm going to take a really close look at too. I think all of them have above average distance, not Daniel Berger, but the other guys. So for them, it'll really just come down to whether or not they bring the irons this week. And a lot of their, positive signal from, their key proximity distances, it looks pretty good. So Sam Burns obviously was, I think, in the third to final pairing last week, but he kind of choked it up on Sunday. Niemann was never really in the mix, but he did have a really good round on Saturday. Obviously, he's one of the longer guys in this field, same with Scotty Scheffler. So they're definitely guys I'm going to be taking a look at, but I'm probably keeping it pretty late from an outright perspective, and I'm probably just going to go with 1 Victor Hovland, 2 Dustin Johnson, 3 Bryson DeChambeau. I see a lot of guys on Rory, but he kind of fell apart last week, was not dialed in on approach. Again, it's 1 week, but he typically plays better on Bermuda tracks. I mean, he's obviously in the top half of this field from a putting perspective on bent grass, but I'm not sure I'm there on Rory. It's just been super inconsistent. But guys that I think can play well on DraftKings, guys like Charlie Hoffman, who had a good week, Johnny Vegas, Kokrak I'm probably staying away from, to be honest. He's not been in good form at all the past couple of weeks. So a lot of this, we're looking at last 24 rounds, but the last few weeks have not been great for Jason Kokrak. But guys like Brooks, Keegan, probably be back on that train this week as well, at least from a daily fantasy perspective. John Rahm, he's 5-1, which is absolutely insane. Data Golf has him at a 13%, 14% chance to win this thing, so it's certainly justified, and he can certainly go out and do it. He's actually the defending champ at the BMW, so something that, again, another reason to maybe keep it a little bit light. It's a shorter field, only 70 guys. I'm personally just going to take a handful of these guys in the next tier, but I think that's the other watch out. Like, almost happened last week, right? With Rahm being in contention and basically in the lead all weekend. The worst case scenario is you bet a bunch of guys at really juicy numbers, and the guy that's 8-1 wins it. So we almost had that last week, and in many ways it's actually more likely to happen this week. So all the more reason to just pick a couple guys and not go too crazy. So that's the model. That's who I'm looking at this week. We'll do an update tomorrow. Take a look at the final betting card, talk about DraftKings strategy, because I think there are some other guys that you can play here. But if you're looking at anything, I would put a lot of weight on driving distance. I would put a lot of weight on strokes gained approach over the past couple weeks and your key proximity distances. And I think something that a lot of people are going to overlook, guys that are not as good on these long par fours. So Rory is actually, long par threes. Rory is actually bleeding strokes there. He's in the bottom 10% of this field, right? Niemann's actually in the bottom 10% as well. So guys like this that I think are being talked up, JT, as well. He actually dunked one in the water on a long par 3. So all of those for good reason. I think just keep it simple, but use this. This is going to be my key differentiator to fade some guys that are pretty popular this week. So that's it for me. Stay tuned for, again, an update tomorrow, final card, DraftKings strategy, all of that fun. And as always, if you like the content, if you like the video, if you learned something, give it a like, subscribe to my channel. We broke 100 the other day, so super exciting. Stay tuned for more to come, and we will talk soon.